Masechet, good morning. Masechet Chagiga Daf Kaf Aleph Amud Aleph 21a1. On Kaf Aleph Amud Aleph, we're starting with the Gemara. Yesterday we just mentioned the 11 chumrot of Kodesh more than Terumah. So Kodesh has a higher level. Remember, Kodesh is any type of korbanot, right? It has a higher level than Terumah. So says the Gemara, Ba Kodesh Mai Tama Lo. Which means we're going back to the first of the 11. What was the first of the 11? Yeah, the first of the 11 was, can you do tevilah inside of another keli? So you have one keli inside of another keli. Can you do it inside of it? So the Gemara asks, "But kodesh mai tamalo? Why be'emet can you not do tevilah on two utensils, one inside of another, when it's kodesh?" So Amar Bilah says Bilah, "Mipnei shekevedo shel keli." The heaviness of the utensil, right, is going to be a chatzitza or the waters of the mikveh, which means you have a keli, you have another keli on top, inside of it, actually, right? It's inside. Pretend it's inside. Okay, so now what happens is the heaviness of the inner keli, which is going to be on the inner keli, the inner keli, which is inside the outer one. The heaviness is going to be a chatzitza that the waters of the mikveh do not go there. So since the waters of the mikveh do not go there, it's not going to be a good tevilah, not for the outer one and not for the inner one. So says the Gemara, 1 second. V'hami de seifa mishum chatzitza. 1 second. We learned that the reasoning of the seifa of the Mishnah was because of chatzitza. So reisha, la mishum chatzitza then. 1 second. If you're going to tell me now that the seifa is talking about chatzitza, so therefore, obviously, the Reisha is not talking about Chatzitza. Why? Let's see the Seifa. What was the Seifa? Tiktani Seifa was, we saw the continuation of the Mishnah. It said, Velo ke midata kodesh, midata truma. Yeah, everyone sees that? Velo ke midata kodesh, that's number 5. Hamsa. Yeah? You have to look in the Mishnah to see it. Yeah, if you look in the Mishnah, right, in the Mishnah number 5, it says, Lo ki midata kodesh, midata truma. Okay, now there, what are we talking about? Sheba kodesh matiru min hagev u'metbil ve'achar kach kosher. Uva truma kosher ve'achar kach matbil. Do you remember we said that by kodesh, you have to untie the knot. Remember, a lot of their clothing on the bottom, they used to have a knot, right? Because if not, it was completely open. So they used to make a knot, even until today. Nowadays, there's some clothing that they make a knot on the bottom of the clothing. Okay. So they come. One more time, right? As Ronen finally said something correct, he went and he said, right? He says, what are you doing? You untie. Yeah, you have to untie it. Miragev, you're going to come and you're going to dry it. You have to let it dry, right? You remember. Umatvil. Then afterwards you come, you do tevilah. Why? Because the moisture was a chatzitza for the mikveh. Ve'achar kach kosher. Then you come and you make a knot again. By truma, kosher ve'achar kach matbil. By truma, you're allowed to make a keshet, and then you're allowed to do tevilah. So 1 second. If number 5, which is considered like the latter part of the Mishnah, is considered a chatzitza, we're talking about chatzitza. So obviously then the reisha, which is the former part of the Mishnah, number 1, was not talking about chatzitza. That's what the Gemara says. Ve'hami ze seifa. Reisha ve'seifa mishum chatzitza. It says no. Also, the first case of the Mishnah, which is the Reisha, which is number 1. What was number 1? Doing tevilah, 2 kelim, one inside of another. There it was because of chatzitza. Plus number 5 was chatzitza. What was the case number 5? When you're going to take a keli that had a knot and you want to do tevilah to it, you have to undo the knot, make sure it's 100% dry, and then do tevilah. Then you can come and make a knot again. You cannot do the other way around, but kodesh you're allowed to. Also, they're both because of chatzitza. So says the Gemara, you need both. How do you know you need both? Which means like this. Usually, right, there's nothing which is superfluous, which means that if you already see it in the Mishnah, so why do I need it again? Right? If I already have number 1, I don't need number 5. Or if I have number 5, I don't need number 1. They're both the exact same concept of halacha, of hasisa. That there is a chatzitza much more by kodesh than by teruma. So the Gemara says, utzricha, and you need both cases. Why? If it was only going to be written the reisha, which is the first case, which is doing tevilah, one utensil inside of another utensil. Havamina, I would have had the havamina. Hainu ta'ama dele kodesh lo. The reason why you're not allowed to do it by kodesh, mishum kevedo shel kli, because there's the heaviness of the utensil. Deika, there's a problem of chatzitza. Aval seifa deleka kevedo shel kli. But in the seifa, there's no heaviness of the utensil. The seifa, you're doing the tevilah on the keli itself. The keli is the clothing, right? On the keli itself, there's nothing heavy which is on top of it, which is stopping the water. So therefore, I would have thought to say that there's no problem. So ema la kodesh nami lo avichatzah. So I would have said, listen, also for kodesh is not considered a chatzitza. Ve'yish minan seifa. Now, if I would only tell you the seifa, what was the seifa? Right, the seifa was the clothing that it has a keshet, has a knot. So you have to untie the knot and then you put it in to do the tevilah. Havamina inu tamad le kodesh lo. I would have thought that by kodesh it doesn't work. Why? Mishum, because kapala pamubet, because the kitra b'maya ahaduke mehada. Because a keshet, right? Kitra is a keshet. Okay, a keshet in the water, ahaduke mehada, it becomes even stronger, becomes even tighter, which means it becomes even, so once it becomes tighter, that's why it's going to be more of a chatzitza. Aval reisha, but in the reisha, what was the first case? Tevilah of a kli inside of another kli. Temaya kuye makbulu lumana. It starts floating. Naturally, water starts coming in, and then things start floating in the water, right? So therefore, lo avia chatzitza, I would say it's not a chatzitza. Tzericha, that's why you need both cases. So both number 1 and number 5. Remember, number 1 in the Mishnah was tevilat keli inside of another keli. Number 5 was doing tevilah on a beged that has a knot. You have to untie the knot. You have to let it dry. You do the tevilah, then afterwards you do the knot again. That is case number 5. Number 1 and 5 are both talking about hasisa. However, though, that by kodesh it's a problem, by teruma it's not a problem. However, though, right, you needed both cases to teach you the halachot of chatzitza. Because of whether it's going to be kevedo shel kli in the first case, you don't have kevedo shel kli, the heaviness of the utensil, in the second case. Plus, number 2, right, you needed the second case because in the case of the kosher, in the case of the it had a knot, knots become tighter in the water. But when you put something in the water, things float. Okay? Next, Rabbi Ilah. Rabbi Ilah comes and he's going to explain the Mishnah. When we say that you're not allowed to do tevilah, one keli inside of another keli, Rabbi Ilah comes and he explains the Mishnah that the reason why we do not do tevilah, one utensil inside of another utensil, right, is because l'ta'ameh, he's going according to his own reasoning. Remember that Rabbi Ilah, right, was the one that said kevedo shel keli, which is hasisa. Yeah, there's a chatzitza in the shiur. Yeah? One more time, right? The reason why, this is Rabbi Ilah. Rabbi Ilah is the one that says, what is the reason why number 1, right? What was number 1? You're doing tevilah, one utensil inside of another utensil. Why is it prohibited? Because of chatzitza, because of the kevedo shel kli inside of the other kli. Says the Gemara, le'tameh de Rabbi Ilah, right? The tameh is going according to his reason. Amar Rabbi Ilah, Rabbi Hanina bar Papa. Says Rabbi Ilah in the name of Rabbi Hanina bar Papa. He comes and he says, Eser ma'alot shanukan. There's only 10 ma'alot which are written in our Mishnah. Yeah? So now, did you realize how many did we have in our Mishnah? 11. He just said there's 10. Yeah? Chamesh rishonot. The first 5 of the Mishnah, right, which is Tiknu Chachamim, ben lekodesh, ben lechulin shenaasu al tarat. Whether we're talking about kodesh or chulin, which is done on tarat kodesh. Remember, when you take chulin and you're going to eat it at the same level as kodesh, that's tarat kodesh, it is like kodesh. Acharonot, but the last 5, la kodesh. Avalo lechulin shenaasu al tarat kodesh, but not lechulin al tarat kodesh. My ta'ama, what's the reasoning? Meaning, why is it that the first 5, right? Is it that the first 5 is going to be different? So basically, what he's trying to say now is that there's 10, not 11, because the number 1 and 5 is the exact same thing. But now there's a difference between the first 5 commandments and the second 5 not commandments. So, the first 5 of the Mishnah and the last 5 of the Mishnah. What's the difference between the first 5 and the last 5? To do with chulin shenasu al tarat kodesh. Now the Gemara is going to ask, my ta'ama, what's the reason? Meaning, why would I differentiate that the first 5 are whether in Kodesh or Chulin, which are Naasur Tarat Kodesh, and the last 5 is only on Kodesh, not on Chulin, Shenaasur Tarat Kodesh. So he says, Chamesh Kamaita, the first 5, De'it lehu drara de tum'ah midoraita. What does that mean? right? It has a shayachut and a zikah. It's called like it's shayach to tum'ah from the Torah, meaning it's like a ikaro min Torah, right? Which means, so therefore what happens? Kazubahu rabbanan. So therefore they came and the rabbis made a decree in it. Ben lekodesh, ben lechulin, shenasad tarat kodesh. You understood, right? Basically what happens is that we say that the first 5, it's got, I'm sure you've heard of this, drara. Many times it has like drara de mamona, drara. Okay, I'll explain to you. Basically like this. The concept of drara means that it's got like a basis. It's got something to do with the doraita, which means the first 5, you go back to a din doraita. Since you go back to a din doraita, so the rabbis made a decree on a din doraita, whether it was kodesh or chulin shenasu al tarat kodesh. But raita, the last 5, there's nothing doraita there, meaning nothing could ever come to mina Torah. There's no basis from the Torah from it. So since the entire thing was only midrabbanan, the rabbis made the decree only for kodesh. But anything which is chulin shenasu al tarat kodesh, the rabbis did not make a decree. Rava comes and he's going to argue on Rabbi Ilah. And Rava comes and he argues on Rabbi Ilah and he says, Midiseifa have mishum hasisa, reishala mishum hasisa. He says, what? 1 second. He says, from the seifa, from the fact that seifa is midin chatzitza. What was the seifa? Halacha number 5. Chatzitza. What was number of the seifa? Halacha number 5. So the reisha number 1 was the mishum chatzitza. So what's the reasoning of the reisha? Why are you not allowed to do tevilah of a kli inside of another kli? So he says, Gezerah shelo yatbil mechatim betzinorot bekli she'en befiv kishfoperet ano. You know what it was? It was a new gezerah. The gezerah was, we don't want you to do tevilah of different types of needles, right? And like small forks. You remember these were small little tiny forks that were used for weaving, right? Which are very, very, very small utensils inside of a utensil, which the mouth of it, the mouthpiece is very, very small. And therefore you don't have kishfoferet anod, right? Which is basically like, it's like halul, right? That they put, it's like a reed, which they put inside of it in order to take some liquids outside. Because since it does not have that amount, it's not considered a tevilah. Because the water that goes in are not considered mechubar to the mikveh. And therefore, since it's not mechubar to the mikveh, it wasn't a good, so for example, let's say I would take that bottle over there. Pass me the bottle, please. Yes, please. This is a very big bottle cap, right? There's a very big bottle cap. But let's pretend it was much smaller, okay? And we're not even talking about the one of the, I didn't actually see the bottle, right? The one of the water. We're talking about even smaller. It has to be that a small reed. If it's a very, very narrow mouth, right? The pia node is very, very narrow. So what happens is when you come and you do the water, when you put the keli inside of the mikveh, now down here, I've got the machat, I've got the needle, or the small mazdigol, these small little forks, which could actually fit inside and come out. They could come in and out. But the fact when I put it inside the mikveh, it's not considered all connected to the mikveh. Because since it's got such a small mouthpiece, so therefore it's not considered. That means even if water comes inside of this utensil, right? But the fact that it's not all connected at the same time, it's like I took water of the mikveh, tevilat kelim, out of the mikveh, right? Imagine right now I take this bottle or this cup, right? I put it in the tevilat kelim, I took it out. Now I come and I take this, I put it inside. Did I just do tevilat kelim? Obviously not, because I did tevilat kelim inside of another keli. I didn't do it in the mikveh. So for me to do it in the mikveh, it has to be connected to the water of the mikveh the entire time. The fact that it's got such a small mouthpiece, it's not considered connected to the. It's not considered a. How do you call it? It's not considered a good tevilah. It's not considered a good tevilah. We already said it 3 times. Shoferet anod, a kaneh chalul. If it's less than shoferet anod, which means less than this reed, which is able to go inside, so then it's not considered an open. Right? Kilitzlan, as we learned in the Mishnah Mikvaot, right? We said eruv mikvaot, which means a mikveh which is going to be lacking, which means we do not have 40 seah in the mikveh. Now it's found beside another mikveh, which is shalem. So you have 2 mikvaot. One is shalem and one is chaser. Now there's a nekev, there's a small hole in between both of them. So it says over here like this. So the nekev, in order to do or we want to call it tashaka nowadays, or we want to call it it's connecting the two of them together. Okay, it has to be kishoferet anod, right? Which is basically the thickness of this, again, this kaneh, this reed, which is going inside of it. Okay, ke'ovya uchechalala, which is like the ovi, right? Which means that the chalala nekev, right, the inner part, the hollowness of the nekev, has to be like the chalav, the shoferet, with the thickness of the dolphin, the thickness of the walls together, which is going to be like 2 etzbaot, kishte etzbaot, chozrot limkoman, which is a shiur of 2 fingers, which means you could put 2 fingers inside, right? And you could actually go around inside of the halal of the nekev. So here it actually says, usually every single finger, it says over here, it's going to be 5 centimeters, right? That's what it says over here. That's a machloket. No, the midot is it's 5 centimeters of shiur Chazon Ish, and some people say it's a little bit even less, right? Even a little less. Well, usually as we say that the finger, right, the guda is usually it's always a gudal, which is basically going to be always 2 centimeters. So therefore, he's saying if it's going to be less than this size, it's not considered that they're both connected. So the shoferet are not the same thing. Just like I wanted to connect one mikveh which was lacking to the other mikveh which is full in order to do the purification process, and now it's going to be okay. The same halacha, when you want to come and you wanted to put this utensil inside and you wanted to connect them together, it has to be the same thickness of that 5 centimeters on the top in order that it could actually penetrate and you could do the tevilah inside. Because if not, then it's connected, it's considered that it's separate. Once it's considered separate, you do not do tevilat kelim inside of the tevilat kelim mikveh, you did it inside the utensil, that's why it's not good. So again, according to Rava, he argues on Ravila, and he says, our number 1 of the Mishnah of not doing, that you're not allowed to do tevilah, one utensil inside of another utensil, kli b'toch kli, is not because of hasisa, it's because of the gezerah. Maybe you're going to take these small little utensils, put it inside of this bottle, and then put it inside. You thought that you did tevilat kelim, and there was no tevilat kelim because it was considered separate in the fact that it was a special gezerah that Rava comes and he says is a completely different reason.